Okay. So, 8 minutes and 15 seconds. Ballin's gonna go live. We're gonna listen to him while I sandbox this shit. Basic settings, dinosaurs, no diseases, the normal lifespans. They do starve though. Give them dinosaur injuries. On dinosaurs don't starve. Now we're gonna need them to starve in case. Dinosaur status checks on. Setting this off will mean ranger teams and MVUs are no longer required. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna set that off. Unlimited feeder reserves. Okay, so yeah, we don't. Dinosaur ginger's guest. Let's put that on. Normal, low escapes. We'll make them intelligent. Yeah, they'll... Okay, land only? No. All dinosaurs can attack vehicles if they want. Because, you know, fuck humans. 100% all the time. Setting this to fussy will give all newly synthesized dinosaurs the fussy trait. Combat on. Setting this off will cause herbivores to not fight with members of their own species. Nah, fuck that. All dinosaurs, negative gene modifications, infinite, unlimited traits. Dinosaur cohabitation. Let's say all like. Setting all like means all territories can completely share space with all other territories. No dislike means that territories that would normally be continuous become neutral. Let's say all like. We want the dinosaurs to be happy. Environment. Yeah, frequent storms, default level settings, infrequent storm. We'll say infrequent. Day, night cycle, 20 minutes. Decoration foliage. Biomes. Current biomes. Jurassic World. Dega, Alpine. Mediterranean. Jurassic Park. Let's go. Isla Nublar. 1993, build your own vision. Yeah, boys. Gonna build a park. Oh, it's a big, nice open space. Alright. I like the no fence thing. You know, like, I'll fence in the peoples, and then the rest of the map can be where the dinosaurs roam. Dino Roman. Alright, so let's say at the corners we'll put entry and exit gates. Only at the corners. build out. So attractions. What attractions here? Boom. Attraction. This is going to be Jurassic World style, so I'm going to delete that. Bunkers. Oh, I gotta build these guys. Shit, I totally forgot about them. Put like 3 on each wall. Minute 50 seconds, Mr. Ballin'. Cyclic level. Operations. Arrival points. Arrival points are going to be
Both of them have been shot multiple times.
What 2 arrival points? Welcome centers. Scientific research. Expedition. Doing some expeditions.
Hello. What'd you think of the opening?
Hello.
I gotta be honest, I love that little graphic. Pretty cool. So, we have a lot going on here.
What do we got going on?
I wanted to start by saying, don't worry, there is a scheduled story today. This is in addition to. Okay, last week was an anomaly. This is in addition to. So don't worry, we're getting a story this week.
Oh, snap.
Before we get going, where are people watching this from? I've already seen some people in the chat. Someone said from Guatemala, which is crazy. I'm in Texas. So where are you guys watching this thing from?
In Texas.
I want to see it in the chat.
True blue
Let's
Texans.
See. 10 out of 10 opening. Thank you. Yeah, honestly, our team did such a good job.
We, of course, are here from Florida,
cool.
The great free state of Florida.
There's a delay in the chat. Here we go.
Yeah, there's definitely
Guatemala City. There you go. Another Guatemala person. Very cool.
Guatemalans.
Well, as you guys are populating where you're watching, there it is. Pittsburgh, Canada, Ohio, Switzerland, Fort Wayne, Indiana. This is flying through. People from all over the place. Love to see it. Thank you. Very cool. So, lots going on here. To get you up to speed, I'd say the biggest thing, if you haven't already heard about this, is I'm actually going live. We're doing a live tour at the end of this year, so September 26th through October 20th. If you haven't heard about that, we are doing a full-blown live tour, and in fact, this is something that is actually being announced right now for the first time. We are going to be selling our graphic novel at every stop along the tour. This is actually the real book right here, the graphic novel.
Hot damn, baby!
And actually, if you have a VIP ticket to any of the tour spots, when you come meet me during that meet and greet, bring your book or get a book while you're there, and I will sign it for you. Okay, so that's a pretty cool feature. But actually, let's bring up the tour landing page right now if we can. All right, so if you go to tour.ballinstudios.com, you can find this right here. Sick little graphic. Love that thing. All right, so let's see. We're going to Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, San Antonio, Chicago, Detroit, Indianapolis, Pittsburgh, Medford, Mass. I'm from Massachusetts, my hometown. Quincy, Mass. We'll be in Medford.
Hometown, Massachusetts.
Philly, New York City, Washington, D.C., Durham, North Carolina, Charlotte, North Carolina, Nashville, and Atlanta. So if you heard any city that's close to you, I would love to come see you, or I'd love for you to come see me. It's going to be an amazing show. We did a test run last year on October 20th. We did a show at the Paramount Theater in Austin, Texas. It was great. We did like half old, half new in terms of stories. There was 5 stories, and for this show as well, it's going to be about that. But it's going to be OG stories and some new ones that have never been told. And including a story from the graphic novel, I believe. So it's an amazing show. Okay, it's basically me up on stage with some cool set design and graphics, just telling stories.
Telling fucking stories.
In addition to the live tour, which is really the big thing that's happening this year, let's talk about what's going on today for this live stream. So today, I'm going to be telling a story that's actually from the graphic novel. I've never told it live before. It's a real good one, and in fact, there's a cool origin story of where the story came from. I'll get into that once I get to the story. It comes from a fan of The Strange, Dark, and Mysterious. That's the person who came up with the story, or this happened to them. But anyways, I'll be telling that story. And then in addition, and also during that story, during the live version of the story from the graphic novel, we are going to put on screen actual images from the graphic novel. So you get to see the actual artwork as I tell it live. It's very, very dynamic over here. Lots of stuff happening behind the scenes. Very dynamic. Happen. So you'll get to see that. We also are doing tier lists again. So if you weren't at the last live stream, we did some tier lists. Those are pretty funny. We also have a giveaway, and I will tell you. So it's a giveaway on Discord, and I will tell you how to, 1, join the Discord, and if you haven't already, and 2, sign up for this giveaway at the end of this live stream. Okay, so there's a giveaway, and also there's a Q&A at the end, a little hangout sesh at the end.
We'll hang out. I'm gonna go
first, we
gotta
get you up to speed on what's going on with my good pal Seagull Lung. So if you've been living under a rock,
and you don't know who Seagull Lung is,
from the
who
like
the
button,
fuck are you?
He thought it was a gift. He opened it up, and it looked like it was a brand new lily pad, but it was rigged with explosives and fireworks. Sent the dude flying, okay? And Lungy was so incensed by the like button that he went rogue to go exact his revenge on the like button. And me, I went looking for him. I couldn't find him, but it would turn out he got his revenge on the like button by filling the like button's house with used porta potties from a recent music festival.
Nice.
And unfortunately, he was caught in the act, and so he was locked up by the FBI, and he's currently in jail. Okay, and so here I am. My best bud Seagull Lung is incarcerated, waiting for his release, and so I did the only thing that we could think to do in a situation like that. And it would be to create a commemorative limited edition merch line called the Seagull Lung Most Wanted merch line. As you can see, I'm rocking one of the t-shirts here. This is old Seagull Lung. This is mugshot.
Yes, sir.
We also have the sleeveless version as well, if you're into that kind of thing. And we have some stickers. Little Seagull Lung action. Okay. And for those who maybe have no idea what's going on about Seagull Lung, it's a long story. Okay, it's like a weird inside joke here in the Strange, Dark, and Mysterious community.
That's what's up.
Anyways, we did a merch drop for the last time when Seagull Lung went rogue. The Rambo thing, which now I don't have anything to show you, but it's sold out like instantaneously, and we just didn't have any more, and so we decided to continue the tradition, and you can get this Most Wanted merch right now. So in fact, if you go to the website here, this is on
I am going to need to
If you click
produce
on shop,
dinosaurs
top there, you
quite
can scroll
soon.
down and see what we got for sale. There it is. There's me. I did a photo shoot. So that picture, actually, if you go show the merch, and we'll show the picture in a minute. So I did a photo shoot with my bud Desiree. I don't know if you're watching this or not, but that picture of me on the right, where I'm gazing off into the sunset there. What you don't know is it was like 1 trillion degrees in Texas when I took that, and I was sweating profusely. And also, I had just laid down in that grass right behind me. We were trying to get this weird, like, model-esque shot where I'm like laying in the grass looking up at the sun, and I'm like holding a piece of grass, and the shot, it did not work out. It was a horrible picture, but all these insects crawled into my shirt and into my pants, and I'm sweating profusely. And so as I'm taking this picture, I was saying, hurry up and take it, hurry up and take it, hurry up and take it, because the whole time my back was like on fire with insects in my shirt.
Oh no, you had insects in your shirt.
Anyhow, Seagull Lung merch, most wanted merch. It's available for purchase. And also the giveaway at the end of the stream, I'm going to tell you how to do it at the end. I'm going to tell you how to enter the giveaway at the end. We're giving away 20 of these bad boys at the end of this live stream. And I'm telling you, it couldn't be easier to sign up for this. So you want to stick around if you want to potentially earn yourself a Seagull Lung most wanted shirt. Pretty good. Pretty good. So, a lot of stuff happening, but a lot of you are like, cool, dude, let's get into the story, and I'm with you.
Yes.
Okay? So we're going to transition now to the graphic novel story. So I'm going to tell it live. You're going to see some images from the graphic novel. And I'm not going to say the name of this one, because if you've heard the story before, the name gives it away. So it's just going to be a story from the graphic novel. And so here we go. So in July of 2012... there was a woman named Simone who was 22 years old, who was living in this beautiful town in southwestern Germany called Rudesham am Rhein. I've struggled to pronounce this word many times. But Rudesham am Rhein. And it's this winemaking village, and it's gorgeous. There's rolling green hills. There's vineyards as far as the eye can see. It's situated right on the Rhine River. It's like this wonderful place. And Simone had grown up in this village. That's
what
where she
shall
lived.
we make
And
first?
she loved it there. Charmed childhood. You know, she's 22 now. But this summer, she was feeling a little bit down because she was actually getting ready to leave this village and start the next chapter of her life in New York City. But instead of dwelling on this sadness of moving away from home for the first time, she instead was really fixated on what she was going to do that summer, her final summer in Rudesham am Rhein. And so Simone, one of her favorite memories of her entire life in this village is in the summer, she would go to this summer camp. There was this beautiful little camp in this forest that was not far from the town. And from the time she was a little kid, she went as an attendee to this camp. You know, there's all these counselors, and there's 200 kids that go to it, and they play games, and there's, they put on stage plays. And it's just this wonderful, wholesome camping experience. And
that's cool.
When she became a teenager, she basically was too old to go to this camp. And so she did what many of the other former attendees did, which is they eventually transitioned to becoming a counselor, like a volunteer counselor. And so she became a counselor and
giving back to the
loved
community.
It, frankly, more than being an attendee. And for every summer after that, she was a volunteer counselor. And this summer, July of 2012, was no different. And she was going to be a counselor as well. So that was what she was going to do with her final summer before leaving for New York City. So in mid-July of that year, Simone packs up her stuff and she heads off to this forest to go be a camp counselor. And so the logistics of this camp is the attendees, the children. It's a 2-week-long camp, 200 kids. They would get dropped off by their parents in the morning, and then in the evening they'd get picked up and go back home.
I actually have to put a little bit of
they would actually live
out here
at the campsite for the 2 weeks. It was like a 2-week time. They were out in the woods together. And, the counselors had kind of created that tradition, if you will, and they told, the staff, if you will, that the reason they were doing that is for efficiency's sake. We got to, we'll be there first thing in the morning because we're living there and we can set the camp up. And, when the kids go home for the day, we're all going to be there anyways. So it's easier to clean up the camp. There's all these reasons they had for it. But the truth was, the reason the counselors liked to stay at this camp and live there is because after the kids would go home at night, all the counselors would retreat to their tents, which they stayed in for these 2 weeks. They put these tents out in the forest. So the camp is like in a clearing, and then basically just into the tree line, they would set up their tents, and the counselors would live out there for the 2 weeks. But once the kids were gone, they would just go out to their little campsite and put a little campfire together. And the drinking age was 16 years old, or it is 16 years old in Germany. And so they just like party, basically. Not like crazy, but they had like a good time out in the woods.
Hell yeah,
so that was
I know
the
what
real
that's like.
allure of the counselor side of being at this camp. So Simone, mid-July, she heads out to the camp. She gets there a day ahead of when camp starts, and she connects with all of the counselors she hadn't seen for so long, and they set up the camp. And then that night, they did not go out into the woods and have a party. They just set up their tents out in the tree line. And then the next day is day one of the actual camp, and the kids come along. They get dropped off by their parents, and they have this wonderful first day of camp, doing their thing, doing camp stuff. And then in the evening, after the kids all left, Simone and the other, dozen or so counselors, after doing all their chores to wrap up for the day, they excitedly grabbed, their beer and wine and rushed out to the tents in the forest to have their first kind of like party night. And so they get out to the tents, and they're all, having a good time, swapping stories, just enjoying summer. And in virtue of it being the first day, a lot of the counselors were pretty exhausted. It was a full effort that first day. And so no one was really up for staying up super late. They wanted to crash and just go to bed. Simone kind of wanted to stay awake. And so she was one of the last people to finally retire into her tent. But she did eventually. It's well past midnight. You got to picture where this is happening too. They're far enough away from the actual campground. They're like well into the tree line that there's no light beyond whatever they have on them. So, if you sleep in these woods, it's like darkness, right? So it's well past midnight. Simone finally is like one of the last people to climb into her tent, and they all slept on these cots that they would put inside of their tent. So they're elevated off the ground. And so Simone gets into her tent, and she gets on her cot, and it's just so hot. It was just really hot this time of the year, and she just felt like
where the story's going.
And so she decided she would pull her cot out of her tent and just basically set it just in the woods. Like, imagine if you wandered off into the woods with a cot, put it down, and lied on top of it. That's what she was doing. She's in the middle of the forest, completely exposed, and she's going to try to sleep because it's a little bit cooler out there. She wasn't the only one doing this. Some of the other counselors had also struggled to fall asleep because of the heat, so there was at least a few other people that had their cots outside of their tent. And so Simone, she puts her cot next to or near another counselor who's already asleep. Simone gets in her cot, and she's trying to fall asleep, but she's still struggling to fall asleep. She could only really hear the sounds of the other counselors that were kind of snoring and, sleeping away, but she couldn't sleep. And she had this growing sense of dread as she was laying, again, in total darkness in the woods, exposed in this cot. I can imagine it being a little bit stressful. But eventually, she falls asleep. I'm going to show you an image that we were going to prep and put on the screen, but I'm going to show you literally in the book. Once she falls asleep...
Show it off, man.
Simone is thrust into a visceral nightmare. One that she remembered every detail of this nightmare. So in her dream, okay, she comes to in her dream, and she looks out, and she sees this post-apocalyptic skyline. It's like a desert city with all these buildings that have now basically fallen into disrepair. They're crumbling over. It looks like, a nuclear bomb has gone off, and we're in the nuclear holocaust, and humanity is being wiped out. And so she's looking off into the distance, and she sees this skyline of just broken down buildings, and it's just, sand everywhere. And between her and these buildings, so in the foreground, are all these people that are just standing there, shoulder to shoulder, maybe like a couple 100 feet away from her. Their clothes are in tatters. They look like some of them are naked, but they're just like barely wearing any of these clothes. And they're standing there, shoulder to shoulder, just staring at Simone. It's hard to detail this and hold this, but there you go. That's the visual for the skyline. And so they're all staring at Simone. And so she instinctively is fearful of these people, but they're not moving towards her. They're not doing anything. They're just kind of standing there like zombies. And so she's kind of taking stock of the scene, and she didn't know why it was scary, but it was. You know, she's like, this is a nightmare, right? As she's looking at these people and as she's taking in the skyline, she takes stock of the fact that on either side of her are these two huge men that she doesn't know how, or they're not physically laying hands on her, but she can tell they are the reason that she can't move from the spot she's in. She's kind of rooted to the spot. The guy on her left is not doing anything. He's just standing there. But the guy on her right is kind of turned to the side, like he's doing something with his hands, but you can't quite see what it is. And so, you know, Simone, she's kind of looking over as best as she can at this guy, trying to figure out what he's doing. She's seeing these people and this horrible skyline. And then at some point, the guy on her right turns back around, and in his hand, he's holding what looks like a wreath, like a holiday wreath you would hang on your door, you know, during Christmas time, let's say. And so Simone sees this wreath, doesn't really know what to make of it. You know, it's this weird, you know, nightmare she's having. But the guy, without saying anything, who's next to Simone, he raises the wreath over her head, right? He's holding it above her head. And at this point, the other guy on the left side of Simone, he grabs the other side of this wreath. So now there's 4 hands holding this wreath above Simone's head, okay? I don't know if I'm in frame, so I'm going to go straight on with the camera. So they're holding this wreath.
You lost me. It's weird.
And they begin to lower it towards Simone's head. And as they do, Simone can tell all these people, they're looking a little bit more intently in the direction of Simone, really taking into account what's going to happen here. And as soon as this wreath touches Simone's head, she feels this blinding pain, like an excruciating pain all around the crown of her head. And she realizes at this exact moment that this is not just some wreath. It's a crown of thorns, and the thorns are digging into her head, and these 2 huge men are pulling it down on her head as hard as they possibly can, and she wants to scream, but she can't make any noise. She wants to run, she can't, and so she's just stuck there feeling this excruciating pain, and blood is pouring down her face, and it's unreal. It feels real. It literally feels real to her. And so in the dream, this goes on for several seconds until finally it's so much that she wakes up. She's out of the dream. And so Simone, she takes stock of the fact that she's in this dark forest, which must have been, you know, disconcerting at first, but she looks around, she's in her cot, she's surrounded by the counselors, she can't really see anything, but she's like, oh, okay, it was just a bad dream. But instinctively, like we all do when we sometimes have, maybe not dreams like this, I hope not, but similar horrible dreams, you kind of check just to make sure you really are not dreaming. And so she reached up and touched her head to make sure she was not, in fact, wearing a crown of thorns. And she touched her head, and there was no crown of thorns, and so she's relieved. But when she brought her hand back down, she can't see her hand. It's too dark. But she felt like there was something on it, something sticky. And at the same time, as she's noticing that there's something sticky on her head, she begins to feel this pain bubbling up around her head that was very similar to the pain she felt in her dream. And so as this pain is ratcheting up and up and up, she catches out of the corner of her eye, again, it's very dark, but maybe out of the moonlight or something, she could either hear something or barely see something running around in the tree line near her, kind of scurrying off away from her. She has no idea what it is, but she can't even focus on it because now the pain, the real pain, not the phantom pain in her dream, but the actual pain to her head is so blinding, she can only focus on that. And it finally gets to the point where she starts to panic. She doesn't know what's going on. She's realizing this is blood. That's what I touched my head. There's blood on my head. And so she begins to scream. So she's screaming, and the girl who's next to her, the other counselor,
in your dreams, you die in real life.
Right next to her. The counselor sits up. She sees Simone screaming. She's like, what's going on? What's going on? She can't see Simone. It's too dark. And so this other counselor fumbles for a flashlight, grabs a flashlight, turns around, and shines it on Simone's face. And the second Simone is illuminated, and this counselor can see her, the other counselor begins to scream at what she sees on Simone's head. And so for the next 15 minutes, it is absolute chaos in the forest as people are screaming. They're trying to figure out what's going on. The other counselors are waking up. Nobody knows what's going on. And in the course of those 15 minutes, the other counselors grab Simone. They put her into one of the vehicles they had at the camp. And by this point, Simone is vomiting. She's still bleeding from her head. And they rushed her to the hospital. I wish I could poll right now and say, what do you think happened? But I'll tell you what happened. When Simone was having that dream, the dream where she sees the city skyline and she doesn't know what's going on, and then suddenly she felt the thorns being driven into her head. Well, the pain she was feeling in her dream of something driving into her head, was synced up with actual pain she was feeling in real life. There was something digging into her head. But for some reason, her body, her brain, didn't process the pain in real life the way you would think you would, like wake up because something's happening to you. Instead, the thing that was happening in real life to Simone's head kind of manifested itself in this dream. So we basically believe Simone was already having a nightmare.
Before.
She's
That's
in
so
this
fucking weird.
post-apocalyptic landscape, and then something in real life began happening to her head, and it entered her dream. That was the crown of thorns. Well, the real thing that was happening was a fox had snuck into the camp, or it was living in the forest, wandered up to Simone,
bro,
and began eating her scalp. And it sat there and ate her head and took at least 20 solid bites out of her head before the pain in real life that had manifested in her dream got so extreme that Simone bolted upright, and her sitting upright scared the fox off, and almost certainly that is the thing she saw scurrying off into the forest. And she was rushed to the hospital. She would be saved, and they actually were able to suture her scalp all back together again.
Fox ate my head.
And they hid the scars in her hairline. But I spoke to Simone, so I mentioned there was a connection to our community. She might even be listening to this, to be honest. Simone posted this story on our subreddit. It was about her and this experience. You know, she described this whole story and how after it happened, she was so traumatized that she not only could not go back in that forest ever again, but she couldn't go into any forests anymore. I mean, it's like true PTSD. And she says she still has phantom pain, you know, where the fox bit her head. And she also said that,
dude, that's gonna fuck with your head. Oh my god,
insane like rabies protocol. Rabies is a lethal, you know, disease you can get from animals that have it. It's treatable, but she had all these shots she had to get. I mean, it was like this horrible experience, but she lived, and she's one of our amazing members of the strange, dark, and mysterious community. And so yeah, that story is a wild one, and it's one of the stories in our graphic novel here. Just to show that image again. Pretty cool, huh? Pretty good. Go to cam 2. So
come on
that again.
Ballin'. You're
I can't show
capitalizing
too much,
off this poor
here's
girl's
what you get to see. Pretty good stuff. Pretty
fox
cool.
head wound.
There you go. All right. So what'd you guys think? I wonder if Simone is. Honestly, I bet she's like in this, and I'm gonna hear a message from her after this. Rabies, big needles, yeah, absolutely nuts. I wish I could say. I'm glad I can say I don't have something to compare that to, but I don't know what that would be like to have an animal be eating your head and have it turn into that's something else.
That's creepy as fuck.
All right, well, on that note, let's go ahead and shift here. And remember, don't drop off here because we have a giveaway at the end, and I'm going to tell you how to join the Discord and how to sign up for that giveaway to get.
Did he kill the Indoraptor
20 of these bad boys? Okay,
they're both still alive.
Let's go ahead and shift to the old tier list here. I'm going to need your help. So here we go. The way this works is there's 3 tiers. Basically, best.
There's no water, so he's going to die.
So top tier is best. So good, Matt. Nice try. Bad. Okay? And we're going to rank. Last time we ranked horror movies.
I'm going to
we are going
change
to
the
put
settings.
Into tiers horror shows. Okay?
Arc gameplay, dinosaurs.
Oh, man, okay. So
I
we got The Watcher, American Horror Story, we got Stranger Things, and The Walking Dead. I'm going to kick this off with The Walking Dead, as that's kind of connected to the story I just told. You know, the post-apocalyptic scene of the people in the desert. You know, the zombies, if you will. So here's my opinion of The Walking Dead. I loved the first season of The Walking Dead. I thought it was a cool show. I remember my wife and I, we were in San Diego at the time. When I was in the Navy, we had just gotten out there, and the show came out, and it was
we're good on water.
When I came back from training, which was like all day long, I'd be gone at all hours, but we had like little bits of time in the evening and the weekend, and we would watch the Walking Dead, and it was awesome. I gotta be honest, after season 1, it went downhill, in my opinion. But I have good memories connected to The Walking Dead, and I'm impressed with the brand itself. I'm going to go ahead and throw that in top tier because of the nostalgia and just the franchise that they created is pretty incredible.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Okay. Next, we're going to do
American Horror
Story. Actually, and by the way, I guess I said I need your help. This is kind of a me exercise.
I'm trying to find out what I like the most.
You can go ahead and judge me in the comments for my for my my choices. That's how we're gonna do this.
This fucking guy.
You're gonna viciously judge my choices. All right, so American Horror Story. Here's my opinion of this. It's a brilliant concept. If you're not familiar with this, it's they get these amazing actors and actresses, and each season has like a theme. You know, like I'm making this up, but there's like haunted hospital, and I'm butchering this. There's different horror themes that the entire season kind of falls into. And it's amazing writing, like the costume design, and the sound of the special effects. I mean, it's amazing. But I just couldn't get into it, you know, like I wanted to. I think that maybe because it's not really based on real stuff. It's loosely based on real events, but not explicitly so. And I think I've become like a snob to that a little bit in virtue of our, you know, the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format is based on real events. You know, we try to make it really credible. That I'm totally, that's the way I go. So I'm gonna put this in meh. I gotta be honest. I'm so good, and I know people are gonna be like, "That's a terrible choice." But hey, here's your chance to judge me in the comments. Next, we're gonna do The Watcher. This one, I watched a little bit of it, but the reason I included it on the tier list is because I've actually covered the real story on our YouTube channel, and so if I recall the details. There's this family that moves into this beautiful dream home in New Jersey. This is like, I think in the 90s or maybe the 2000s. It's relatively recent. They move into this beautiful home. This is the real story. And as soon as they move in, I forget exactly how this happens, but they start receiving mail from some anonymous person that basically says they are like the watcher of this property, and they have been for so many years, and before them it was somebody else in their family. It's like this lore around the house, that this house is basically being watched by somebody, but it's not clear who, and it's not clear if their intentions are good or bad. It's more like, imagine moving into a house and you got a letter being like, "Hey, how's it going? I see you moved into the house. Well, I've been watching this house for 100 years, and I watch everything that happens inside the house, and I'm watching you right now, and you don't know who I am." So it kind of continues in that vein. It gets very bizarre. The real story does. And I admittedly have not watched the entirety of the series, but it's about that story. So there you go, Watcher. I'm going to go ahead and throw that in so good because I can't genuinely rate it as such because I didn't really watch all of it. This one's going to get a reaction, unfortunately. People are going to hate me for this. Stranger Things. You ever fall into the trap of you're watching a show and you discover a character flaw in like one character?
Yeah.
And you can't let it go. It consumes every scene they're in. Like, I'll give you another example because I don't want to say who it is in this one, but I'm sure people can figure it out. The show Dexter, which is an amazing show. I'm going off. I could have included Dexter in here, actually. Dexter, about the serial killer guy. So his sister, I just felt like her cussing and swearing was so forced and awkward that I couldn't watch it anymore. Even though the show was great. Like, every scene she was in, even if it was like a nice, like, wholesome scene, she just had to be so vulgar and awful. And it wasn't like for any other reason than they just decided, yep, we're going to make her vulgar and awful in every scene. And it made me detest her character. And then I couldn't watch the show anymore. Something similar happened with Stranger Things. It made me hate the show. I got to be honest. I'm throwing it in nice try, and I know people are going to disagree, but that's where I'm at. It's an incredible franchise, similar to The Walking Dead in the way they grew it out, but I couldn't let go. Couldn't let go of it. Okay? So there you go. I want to see... Oh, see, some people are agreeing with me. I hated his sister from Dexter. There we go. Yeah, dude. Let's go ahead and we'll pretend there's a tier below nice try that's just big fail. And that's where Dexter's going to go.
Yep.
Okay? So Dexter's down there. We can't even show it. It's so bad. That's Dexter. Okay. Good tier list. Cringe. Period. Nice. How dare you? Yeah. I've made some enemies, guys, but hey, that's what the tier list is for, to make enemies. Okay. Moving on. The next thing we're going to do is a little Q&A action. So the way this is going to go is we actually sourced these questions already from our Discord server. And this might be a good time to throw in the comment section a pinned comment for the... if you have not joined our Discord server, which is this really cool place of the most diehard Strange, Dark, and Mysterious fans. It's free. It's this amazing
Ranger
community, online community that's really well run. You can do so by clicking on the pinned comment right now in the chat, and it just brings you in. You can join our Discord server. It functions a lot like Reddit, but frankly, it's just better, and it's customized to the Strange, Dark, and Mysterious. And so people asked some questions from Discord, and we grabbed a few questions for right now. So the first question comes from Ellie Enchanted. Again, this is from our Discord server. And it is, what is your favorite story to read to your kids? And the reason I chose this is I actually don't tell the types of stories that land on YouTube. I make up a story every single night. And in fact, right now, I believe my son and my 2 daughters are watching this right now, as is my wife. Hello, fam. But every night, I tell my son in particular a story, and I make it up. And it always starts the same way.
That's pretty cool.
So here it goes. It goes, once upon a time, there was a little boy named Ernie Lee. And he loved his mom and dad, and he loved his 2 sisters, Ella and Cora. And he had 3 kitties, Eddie, Rosie, and Chewie. And he had 7 pet dinosaurs. Their names were E2, Mouth, Max, Rex, Raptor, and Billy. He also had a pet toucan named Tookie Took. And he had a pet dinosaur named Dinosaur. And his 3 best friends were Elsa, Anna, and Olaf. And also all the princesses lived with him, and all the superheroes lived with him as well. And they lived in his bed, which was a rocket ship, inside of his house, where nothing could ever hurt them in his rocket ship. And that's where they lived. And so that's the opening. And then most stories go, and one day, Ernie Lee decided to go for a walk in the forest. And he told Elsa and Anna, and by the way, we have props for these. We lay in bed and I hold the Elsa and Anna prop. He told Elsa, hey, I'm going to go for a walk in the woods behind our house. And Elsa always says to Ernie, no, Ernie, it's not safe out there. You need to be careful. And he says, it's going to be fine. I'm Batman. And so Elsa says, okay, that's fine. And so Elsa and Anna and Olaf and all the princesses and all the superheroes, they bid Ernie adieu as he leaves our house. You know, he's got his special pack filled with all his special tools and his snacks and his drinks. And he leaves out the back door and he heads towards the back fence. He hops the fence and he makes his way into the forest. And all day, Ernie was just walking along through the forest, enjoying the view, seeing the insects and the birds and having a nice time. But at some point, Ernie got lost. He got turned around, and before long, he couldn't find his way back, and it was dark out, and he was totally all alone. And so he decided, well, I guess I'll have to pitch my campsite right here for the night, and when it gets light the next day, I'll have to make my way back home. So he pitches his campsite, but before he goes in his tent, he makes a campfire, and he drinks his milk by the campfire. Critical detail. He's a big fan of chocolate milk. Drinks his chocolate milk, and then he goes inside of his tent. And as he's trying to sleep, he hears something. And he sits up in his tent and he looks around. He has no idea what's going on. And he goes to the tent and he unzips. He unzips the tent and he looks out. And he doesn't see anything. All he can see is the embers of the fire. But he hears footsteps behind the tent. That's terrible footsteps. I do a better job with my son. And then suddenly, into his vision pops Bane, the villain from Batman. And Bane says, Ernie, I'm gonna get you. But luckily, Ernie Bussow, turns into Ernie the Batman. And he jumps out of his tent and he says, not today, Bane. And he grabs Bane and says, don't be mean, Bane. And Bane says, you're right. I'm sorry. I'll never do that again. And so Bane becomes Ernie's friend. And Ernie turns back into regular Ernie, not Ernie the Batman. And the two go back to the house because magically Bane knows how to get back to the house. And waiting at the house in the middle of the night are all the princesses and all the superheroes and all his dinosaurs and kitties giving him a hero's greeting, a hero's welcome.
Sounds
Ernie
right.
walks back home and they all give him big hugs and high fives and they say, Ernie, you saved the day. And then they all retreat to Ernie's rocket ship and they put on their pajamas and they snuggle into the bed with their milk and they sip their milk and they drift off to sleep. The end. So every single night, I tell some variation of Ernie Lee becoming Batman and then saving the day from various villains that are typically villains that we've read about in a comic book because he loves Batman and Superman and the Flash. We'll pull villains from the books who always sneak up on him and then he saves the day. Yep. And then before that, with my daughters, when they were young, I know I got 15 minutes here. My daughters, the story was they would my daughters are much closer in age, and when they were younger, they would go into a haunted pyramid in Egypt, even though they were warned by their parents, don't go in that haunted pyramid. But in the story, of course, they go in the haunted pyramid, and there's a door that shuts on them, and then they're in the middle of the pyramid, and these mummies come out of the walls, and they have to ward off the mummies, and of course they save the day, in their own way. And they come out, and they're chastised by their parents, but they're also told, you're so brave for facing those mummies head on. So those are my favorite stories to read to my kids. I hope that answers your question, Ellie Enchanted. Next question is from Queen Day Walker, and it is, what natural disaster scares you the most? Honestly, so my family and I, we were living in Virginia several years ago.
Earthquake.
And a twister, like a very small, I wouldn't even call it a tornado, but like a twister came rocketing through our town, and I watched it. I remember there was a storm warning, and I looked out the front door, and I watched this twister go over the roof of my neighbor's house, and it didn't rip their house apart, but it totally pulled a bunch of shingles and really kind of messed up the roof of their house, and it just barely missed ours. And I remember feeling so utterly powerless. Like, if this was a real tornado and it came to my house, there is nothing you can do. I mean, you got your tornado shelters and everything, but I'd go with tornado. That to me feels just horrifying.
If forest fires
looks
count,
like
that would be
we are
mine.
on to question number 3. If you want to put in the chat what you're most afraid of, natural disaster wise, love to hear it. Next, what excites you the most about going on tour? This comes from my boy Crew. Kind of a cheat code. You guys all know Crew. He's from the Discord server. He runs the server. He's the man. He wants to know what excites me the most about going on tour. So honestly, I think doing live storytelling is like the purest form. It's like anything can happen. I love storytelling, and I think doing it live is the best version I can do. I think that it also it's cool to have an audience that's right in front of you. You get to react to the audience, and also it's tough to sit in a studio and tell stories all the time. Just in terms of my life, it's a lot of sitting in a studio and telling stories by myself to a camera. I love the idea of getting to meet you all. And I mean, that's the cool part of this, that it's not me in a void. It's all of us. We're together in this. And the tour is like a chance to come together.
Are we though?
Maybe corny as that sounds, I think it's great. And I will say, actually, there's been lots of questions about, is the tour age appropriate, for kids? I will say, yes, it is. We are going to make sure, or we have made sure, that the tour it's not going to be G-rated, but it's not going to be for example, the most gruesome story I can think of is the one we did about the oil rig worker called Magellan, where it's a places you can't go story, where this person basically gets pulled through a hole this big that they can't fit through, and a machine pulled them through it. So you can imagine how gory that story is. Stuff like that's not going to be on this. It's going to be more psychological and more wow, that's wild. So it's, in short, you can bring your kids if the least intense versions of Mr. Ballin stories are cool for your kids, then this is definitely going to be that. It's more psychological and more holy cow, versus that is so horrific. We're not going that route. So call it PG-13 to PG, somewhere in there. And actually, since we're firing off all these questions, I actually want to give the poll. Oh, nice. We already got it right here. I was just going to say, we got to try the poll. So if you see in the YouTube chat right now, there is a poll. This is the new poll feature, guys. So what's scarier? The possibility of intelligent life in space, or none at all? So just, this is a question I ponder.
None at all.
If you think about it, yes, it would be horrifying
that
to
would
find
mean
out
we'd
there's
be
an
fucked.
alien civilization living on Mars or some distant planet. Horrifying in the sense that would really change the way we think about ourselves and how we fit into the universe. But what is also equally terrifying is, what if we're it? What if we are it? There is nothing else. It is this vast
Nobody's
expanse,
coming to
and we are
save
the
us,
only
bro.
living things. That is intensely terrifying in and of its own right. So what is scarier? Possibility of intelligent life, or we are it, which is worse? And I gotta be honest, I think that to think we are alone feels more horrifying, I would say. Can we go to the next question? We down to do question number 2? Can we do that? Question number 2. So it sounds like people agree with me. It's about 60% nothing out there. And by the way, 10 minutes from now, the regularly scheduled programming is going to be coming on this channel. Okay, a story is coming out in 10 minutes. And I will also say this story that you're going to hear, not live, but the scheduled one, it was really, really, really hard to tell that story. You'll see in the opening, I try to explain it. It was a emotionally fraught story. That was a really hard story to tell. Not clickbait. You'll see immediately that I was pretty emotional telling the story. It's a very intense story. So, next question in the poll is who would win in a fight? Lungy or the like button? Come on! It's of course the Lung! Lung is the winner. Easily.
Yeah.
We got 1,000 votes in there.
Call him out.
Lung is the winner by far.
Lungy!
The like button. Come on. That's easy. So, yeah, Lungy wins. Next question. Would you rather watch a movie or read a book? I think we touched on this last time. We'll do it again. Lately, I gotta be real. I'm a book guy, but I'm totally not like I read 7,000 books a year guy. That's not me. I'm lucky if I read like 2 a year, but I enjoy those 2 books. Those are good books. Right now I'm reading, in addition to the Mr. Ballin graphic novel, I'm reading The Lost City of Z by David Gran. It's about explorers who went into the Amazon. I talked about it on an Instagram story about all the horrible insects in the Amazon. Like, they're called bee lickers, or eye lickers are in the Amazon. They're this type of bee that are attracted to the liquid on your eye, and they'll like sting your eye. Anyways. All right, so lots of people saying movie. Actually, that makes sense. I'm acting like that's weird. I'm probably now more book than movie, but not on whole. There you go. So movie wins. Last one. If you hear something go bump in the night, what is your first thought? A, it's a ghost. B, it's a burglar. C, it's Lung. D, I don't care. I'm tired. So what are you thinking? It's the middle of the night. You hear a bump. Is it a ghost? Is it a burglar? Is it old Lung? Or I don't care. It's going to pop up any second, I promise. I'm even getting a countdown over here.
Somebody fix the gate, damn it.
Almost. We're learning how to use the poll feature as well. Okay, here. We're going to... Did it not pop up? There it is. Boom. Sorry. Maybe because there's 4 answers. It's a little bit more cray. Let's hear your answers. What do you think if you hear a bump in the night? There's only 4 options that it could possibly be. Ghost, burglar, Lung, I don't care. There's literally nothing else that it could possibly be. And I'm going to go ahead and override this statistic because a lot of people are erroneously choosing burglar. You should have chose Lung. So we're going to go ahead and go with Lung. I've overridden this poll. Lung is the only correct answer.
You voted wrong.
All right, hey, so the new video is coming out in 7 minutes. But before you go, I told you I was going to tell you how to do this giveaway. It's very simple. Right now, if you are not already signed up for our Discord server, the pinned comment in this live stream has the link to the Discord server. You just click it. It's so easy. It'll walk you through how to join. It's not a cost. It's not a hidden cost. You just join. It's very easy. Once you've joined, so either you've just joined or you already joined, on the left side, you can see it on the screen right now, there's all these things you can click on. Click on giveaways right there. The mouse is hovering over giveaways. You click on that, boom. And then you scroll down where it says New Ball and Mr. Ball merch. You click that emoji. Once you click it, you are entered. It is that easy. Sign up for Discord, pin in the comment, giveaways, click the emoji. That's all you have to do. We're choosing 20 people that are going to get old wanted merch, Lungy wanted merch. If you go to our website, ballinstudios.com, you can get your Lungy merch as well, the new wanted Lungy merch. Again, I'm going on tour. If you go to tour.ballinstudios.com, there you go. All our dates are there. We're going all over the place. I'd love to see you. Bring your graphic novel or buy one there. And if you have a VIP ticket, I will sign this bad boy when I meet you at the show, okay? The show's going to be awesome. Get your tickets. And again, there's regularly scheduled programming going out in 6 minutes. It was a really hard episode to record. That's not a lie. You'll see as soon as you see the first 5 seconds of the video. But it's a really powerful episode that meant a lot to me, and I think it'll mean a lot to the family who is in the video. Thank you all so much for joining me on this wonderful live stream. Enjoy the video in 5 minutes. Go sign up for the giveaway. Get your tour tickets. Bring your books. Get your merch. Love you guys. Till next time. See ya.
See ya! Didn't want to be. See what else they got on YouTube. The anti-woke, whatever. How to beat tremors.
If your isolated desert settlement was plagued by the sand aversion of the infamous Alaskan bullworm, what would you do? 90s Kevin Bacon and his buddy Earl were trying to seek out greener pastures beyond the confines of their ironically named town of Perfection, Nevada, with all of its 14 residents and no hopes of a brighter tomorrow. When giant worms picked off the Graboid Homeowners Association, who don't wish to see their land's value plummet, the dynamic duo find out that they should have been constructing worm fencing all along. I'm going to break down the mistakes made, what you should do, and how to beat the Graboids in Tremors.
We are handymen.
We start out following Val and Earl, hard at work constructing fences in the vast Nevadan desert wilderness. You know, in case they need to mark the confines of the wide open nothing in this barren stretch of land. Oh wait, did I say hard at work? I meant hardly working. Apparently, this is how these guys start their day off. Wake up in the back of a pickup, and then play rock, paper, scissors to determine who's responsible for preventing starvation on that particular day. They then hammer all of one fence post into the dirt, and on to the next task they go. As it turns out, their next task involves stopping in the middle of nowhere to do some 90s bacon flirting.
Yeah, geography. Geology.
Actually, seismology.
Stereotype seismologist, sunscreen on the nose Barbie tells the duo that she's been sent out here to observe strange readings that they've been getting on their seismographs. Considering Perfection, Nevada is actually Lone Pine, California, that makes perfect sense. The actual area this was filmed in sits on the Lone Pine Fault, in between valleys. Earthquakes do definitely occur in the area, albeit usually quite minor ones. That being said, the area has definitely experienced some devastating quakes as well, such as the 1872 Owens Valley earthquake that destroyed literally half the houses in Lone Pine. This would likely have me taking her strange readings a bit more seriously, just in case. They hop on over to the general store, aka the only store in a 100-mile radius. All that hard work is certainly deserving of a beer run after all. There they run into Bert and Heather Gummer, the survivalist nuts of the town, as they're counting their hollow points and survival supplies. Ah yes, my kind of people. Speaking of crappy jobs, our two smooth-talking jagoffs have had enough and are about to leave their middle-of-nowhere town behind for Bixby, the nearby big city everyone's taken charge of their own fortunes in.
Edgar, get your butt down from there!
Nerds. I've been seeing more and more comments asking how I can possibly sleep at night after hypothetically abandoning so many annoying characters to suffer unimaginable fates. Well, the truth is, like an absolute boulder. And it's all thanks to my chilling lack of empathy, as well as today's video sponsor, Manta Sleep. Manta Sleep is planet Earth's foremost supplier of everything you need to enhance your sleeping experience. From high-quality sleep masks with optional cooling eye cups, to travel pillows, earplugs, and even blue light glasses for those of us getting just a little too much screen time. Manta Sleep has made it their mission to help people live healthier, happier lives by delivering the tools to achieve consistent and uninterrupted rest. After all, 9 out of 10 doctors agree that sleep is very important, and the 10th one just passed out from exhaustion. Seriously though, getting enough rest is outright essential for both maintaining and improving every aspect of your physical and mental well-being. And even if you're already satisfied with your current amount of sleep, just think of it this way. You're probably spending about a third of your life horizontal. Don't you want to get as much out of that time as possible? I know I do. That's why I never leave home without my Manta Sound sleep mask. Whether I'm conking out on a plane, in a hotel, or in my own bed, I always wake up feeling refreshed and ready to tackle whatever life throws my way. It also comes in handy when reviewing particularly terrible movies, as do the earplugs. So if you're ready to supercharge your slumber, click the link in the description and be sure to use my offer code, Nerd Explains, to get 10% off your cart at checkout. Keep in mind, this code does not apply to bundled items, as they've already been generously discounted. Thanks to Manta Sleep for sponsoring this video. As they hit the road and get ready to drive down the Nevada desert, they notice a human silhouette above them near the power lines, seemingly having fallen asleep on the job or something. Upon closer examination, it turns out to be Edgar Deems, one of their buddies and the local town drunk. In fact, probably the only town drunk here. He appears to have died trying to stay off the ground. judging by his clutching grip on that beam. Not sure what he was afraid of, considering he died beside his rifle. Or maybe he was just looking to end it all and got scared, but didn't know how to get down anymore. Who knows? That certainly would appear to be possible, as the local doctor, Jim, says he died due to dehydration, meaning he was likely indeed afraid to climb down for some reason. Perhaps he urinated on someone's motorcycle and just wanted to avoid an altercation. After all, 7% of the population of your town out to kill you sounds pretty awful if you think about it. Jokes aside, I'd initially brush this down to just a drunken adventure gone wrong, with alcohol-fueled dehydration in a desert climate ultimately doing the old man in. The fact that we didn't find any bullet casings anywhere around electrical poles bizarre. As Val and Earl call out later, who isn't scared of a Winchester rifle? It's still very hard to come to the right conclusion with the amount of information at hand, but I can't help but wonder why old man Edgar didn't fire his rifle at all. Whether at the threat at hand directly, or simply in the air to ensure that you can alert someone to your emergency situation. I'd imagine gunshots in a quiet rural town like this would likely attract some attention. The town residents would maybe also just brush it off as their gun nuts doing some target practice though, and not look any further into it initially. But sooner or later, they'd figure it out. The whole 3 to 4 days to die of dehydration is total bullcrap as well. Most people don't make it through the first 36 hours in the desert without water, and nobody makes it past 72 hours. That's under normal circumstances. Factor in the old man's age, exhaustion from running away plus climbing the pole, and the fact that he was an alcoholic, and you'd be speeding that timeline up significantly. I can't imagine someone in that general physical condition would last longer than 24 hours up there tops. Alcoholic musings aside, I wouldn't have any reason to assume that there's any foolery afoot just yet. Perhaps Mr. Mary and his little lambs will manage to change my mind. He's just minding his own business, tending to his already audibly freaked out rare kebabs. The old geezer doesn't even get the chance to figure out what's ailing his soon-to-be wool sweaters before a rogue creature drags him down to the depths below to serve for all of eternity as a flash-fried desert-baked shepherd's pie.
Yeah,
mocking the son of a shepherd was no big deal to this mysterious creature. In fact, they have no problem at all with turning the residents of perfection into nothing more than lines on a seismograph. At least you could argue that there was technically a witness to his untimely demise in the form of Rhonda. Issue is, she probably wouldn't be able to figure this one out before the other 12 residents of the town meet the same fate, since it's nothing a seismologist would reasonably expect. Fortunately, our two heroes stumble upon the aftermath on their way out of town. I say fortunately because at least now someone can confirm the fact that the shepherd didn't just go missing or something. There's literally pieces of lamb just thrown everywhere, along with Fred's severed head in the sand. That is pretty damning. Where these two again demonstrate their kind of impressive lack of functioning brain cells is passing the construction crew on the one road out of this town and not adequately warning them of the danger. They just mumble some crap about a killer being on the loose, instead of actually slowing down and telling the construction crew that you just found at least a dozen dismembered sheep scattered all over Fred's farm, along with his severed head. These guys would know who Fred is. Describing the horrific way in which you just found his remains would 100% increase your credibility tenfold. Literal street cred in this case is all it would have taken to make the difference. Instead, the crew just assume it's a gag for the most part and keep drilling into the road with their trusty jackhammer. The road responds by leaking blood? Hey man, maybe you just found some fancy red oil or something. You know, that red gold. Or not. The unfortunate road worker was so blown away by the prospect of striking gold that he didn't manage to get his foot out of the conveniently created loop in the jackhammer's cable, getting him dragged over the hills and far away. Well, technically speaking, he's not going to be needing another penny for the rest of his life, so I wasn't entirely incorrect when I said his money problems are over. His buddy tries to help him out, wanting some of that financial freedom for himself, getting turned into yet another line on a seismograph. That's 21% of the population of this town dead, with another 14% ready to GTFO. Val and Earl make it back to the general store, trying to inform nearby police departments of the attempted cleansing taking place in their quiet town. Turns out these creatures are 99% brains though. as they've seemingly thought to cut communications ahead of their attacks. When the Baconator duo tries to get to Bixby again, only this time to signal rescue instead, they also find out their adversaries have blocked the roads out of town. Well, more like the only road out of town, seeing as this town is surrounded by mountains on all sides except for this one road. That shouldn't necessarily be the end of the world here though, particularly when just about everyone in this town drives vehicles suited for off-road conditions. So just, go around. In spite of the danger slowly but surely becoming increasingly clear, Val and Earl can't take the hint. Cut communications, beheaded farmers, dead cattle, only way out of town blocked, with the road workers from just an hour ago now near certainly dead as evidenced by a bloody helmet. These are all but small hindrances and truly no match for the plot armored. Instead of finding a way around and utilizing their vehicle for its intended purpose, the Dream Team makes it back to perfection, hoping to inform the other residents of their impending doom. When they make it back, it turns out they've unsuspectingly picked up a hitchhiker. Cool, so right about here is where you ask the gun nuts to arm everyone capable of holding a firearm in this entire town, which means like 11 people, and start fortifying the strongest building nearby. Considering access to food and supplies, I'd say the general store ought to do it. Should we want a beefier setup, I dare wager the Gummers, being survival nuts and all preparing for World War III, would likely have a pretty fortified house, or at least a reinforced cellar or something. If we're not sure, we could always ask them. Provided it checks out, we can ferry food and water over to their doomsday shelter instead, rather than shipping guns over to the store. Provided they actually have that many guns anyway. Even if they don't, there's plenty to go around already. At the store, on the residence, for them to make either of these options work. Instead, Old Man Shang immediately buys it from Earl and Val so he can cook up some extraterrestrial chicken teriyaki for his patrons. Seriously though, who the hell reacts that way? I found our pro tags relatively smart starting off, compared to other horror movie characters anyway. Their execution may have been awkward, but attempting to seek help and warning others if unable to do so are all valid moves when dealing with a threat of this nature in an isolated community. However, once you see these weird appendages hanging off the back of your truck, knowing full and well that this is not like any normal creature you've ever seen out here, and that a bunch of your people have just turned up dead at the same time, it is officially time to start thinking beyond that. Arming up at the very least would be a minimum requirement here at this stage in the movie. Earl was already keeping a revolver handy after they found Fred earlier, to further prove my point. They also correctly assessed that there's a possibility of more than one of these mystery beasts lurking in and around their town, which is why I'd also suggest rounding everybody up in the same location to avoid anyone getting caught out by themselves, because they don't know that they're in danger. Speaking of unarmed, unaware, and exposed, Jim and Megan, the doctor from earlier, and his wife, are taking care of business at their active housing project, as they didn't hear about any of the stuff that went down following Edgar's death, and nobody decided their lives were worth enough to inform them of the danger that they're currently in. They're out blissfully enjoying the fantasy that is near-term homeownership. When they go to check on a power line hidden underneath the dirt, they anger the creature. They see the electrical appliances being violently ejected from the sand and cement. Megan shows us just why women tend to outlive men, urging her husband to leave whatever did that untouched into GTFO instead. Jim's reason for refusing that request is, and I quote, maybe it's a geological thing, like natural gas or a geyser.
So
right, in which case you would want to leave and have the pros come check it out all the same. This lapse in recognizing danger, combined with the disrespect towards the mystery creature beneath the surface by calling it natural gas, caused Jim to wind up on the receiving end of an alien-produced sinkhole. Through quick thinking and clearly superior intellect, Megan tries to give him a way out by extending a 2x4. In a quicksand situation, this may actually provide a reliable way out for those trapped in the quicksand's hold. However, as Megan finds out shortly after her husband is consumed by the hole, this is not quicksand. She does the smart thing by immediately bolting towards their car, but finds the keys aren't in the ignition. There's no way she could retrieve them off Jim at this point, or find them if they're somewhere else. Therefore, I would suggest rushing towards their project house. Sure, it's not finished, but the foundation's likely concrete. providing some level of fortification against the worm. Instead, she just assumes everything's over as soon as she breaks visual contact with it, which she regrets almost instantly. It's truly the hesitation that got these two killed. Jim was arguably screwed regardless, due to the fact that he didn't immediately think something dangerous was underneath his feet, since he had no reason to assume so. Megan, however, could have bolted straight for their house once she broke a visual contact, or she could have simply opened any of the car doors once it started to go vertical, rather than just sit there. Precious seconds can save lives. And with that, we're at 35% of the population liquidated into worm food. You may be wondering what the rest of Perfection's up to, given they actually did have a heads up and a rough idea of what they're dealing with. Well, they're debating stupid political ideologies, posing with the alien tentacle and taking pictures with it. And our star duo is about to try and venture out to Bixby again on horseback instead of by truck. To their credit though, they are at least all held up in the same general area, with at least a few guns and a ton of supplies. Bert's right on the money though. Keep watch, set up perimeters, fortify, arm up, and kill anything without two legs. Then there's the insufferable pacifists, who'd rather do nothing while a very serious percentage of their population's already been murdered. And Melvin, who nearly gets himself capped pretending the alien's tentacles wrapping itself around his neck. I would have just stopped. Whoops, he really tricked me with that one. Bacon and Earl depart through the desert on horseback, even though I still wholeheartedly believe that looks drivable at slow speeds with a decent off-road vehicle. They make a pass by the doctor's house on their way out, finding nothing, of course, initially. That is until they find the completely buried Ford in the dirt, which causes them to haul out of town. Along the totally off-road vehicle accessible plains, the graboid threat finally decides to reveal its ugly face when Val shoots one of the tentacles. Those tentacles were basically its tongues, which it uses for hunting purposes.
This is the tongue, and the whole thing is the worm.
The actual worm behind it is enormous. Val and Earl lose access to their horses, which understandably freaked out beyond function at the mere sight of these things, and find themselves trying to outrun these monstrosities on foot. They hop behind a concrete barrier and learn that the worms have one weakness.
Without their heads, they're powerless!
Basically, this thing smashed itself into a concrete barrier at full force. So much for these worms being intelligent. Maybe the communications cutout was just a bad service provider and totally unrelated to the worms. This does, however, bring us a classic and important detail. Our adversaries can be killed. It appears that they hunt using sound and are attracted to the vibrations above the ground. They burrow towards their prey and use these tiny tentacle tongues to latch onto stuff and then basically collapse onto it. Considering it ran our duo down to its death, it would be more than reasonable to assume that it can be baited into attacking quite easily. It also doesn't require a completely unrealistic amount of force to kill it. So, what should our strategy against a threat of this nature be? I say we hit up the local gun nuts again and give them the mother of all passes to go crazy on some worms. Hell, I'd even offer to subsidize the ammo money with the other residents, seeing as the couple would be saving our lives and all. With the arsenal that they've likely got at hand and the amount of bullets we see them definitely having in stock, they could arm the entire town and provide everyone with reliable firepower to fill these worms full of holes. Considering they're drawn to sound, it's then as simple as either making noise from within a concrete and safe structure to draw them towards you, or you'd set up sound traps using things like radios to lure the graboids to a specific location. Use different types of bait as well, just in case they're smart enough to recognize the same trick after a few kills. Then, when they show up, you can pump them full of lead, rinse and repeat.
Hey guys, what's going on?
Val and Earl finally have scientific evidence of what murdered so many in their town. And what do you know? Rhonda conveniently shows up just in time to ensure that they have a scientific opinion on the matter too. How she managed to hold out that long just wandering around in the worm's territory without getting snacked on is beyond me. And she sure looks snackable to me. I'm calling it plot armor. Through scientific examination, Rhonda confirms the obvious, that they hunt by sound and are subterranean. Thanks, Sherlock! She does, however, provide seismographic readings that indicate that there's 3 more of these things lurking around in the area. No more, no less. She is very sure that it is exactly 3. Excellent. That makes my previous strategy with sound traps seem like a piece of cake. Just like the worms wiped out an enormous percentage of their population, Val and Earl have also wiped out 25% of the worms' population just as quickly. We only need to bait out 3 more and have the gummers blow them to smithereens and we can all go home. This should be easy, because they'd likely be hungry as hell around the clock due to how much energy their existence would consume, making them likely to come looking for us anyway. However, for the sake of reality, it does need to be called out. There is no way animals of this size would be hunter predators at all. Animals of this enormous size would realistically be burning thousands upon thousands of calories just being alive and breathing to power their cells. The kind of diet that these things would have to be on to simply exist would be ridiculous. And that's if they're passive. With all the moving these graboids do in this movie, not to mention the tunneling under the rock-solid ground for every single inch, they would likely require insane amounts of energy. With how they're just ravaging buildings and vehicles too, I'd imagine that calorie count would have to be even more amped up to match demand. The characteristics of a hunting predator would be better suited towards smaller variants of these worms. If their genetics insisted on them being big boys for all eternity, they would definitely evolve to be ambush predators over time. That would allow them to conserve all their energy and wait for prey to come to them instead. I'm not sure how fruitful that endeavor would be in Perfection, Nevada, seeing as they'd run out of food in about a week tops given the population. That's if they can get the initial 14 people to all actually walk into one of their traps, which I doubt would happen to begin with. I'm thinking a hybrid between a Sarlacc and Star Wars, and some kind of trapdoor spider is the kind of hunting style that I would see them adopt, if so. Not full Sarlacc, since nobody would ever walk up to the pit, but rather an area in the sand that they make seem like their surrounding topography, before they just slam their mouth shut around their prey and swallow them whole. A bit more alligator style in that regard, except in the desert. Otherwise, these things just wouldn't function. In real life, there's plenty of examples of this, both at sea and on land. Spiders and various other insects are known to camouflage themselves to bring prey within grabbing range, before they just pounce at them and devour their prey whole. Frogfish mimic the motions and look of a fishing hook to lure gullible fishies into their grasp. Zone-tailed hawks even fly in formation with vultures pretending to be one of them, before they break formation and single out prey. It's a very real and logical form of hunting, but the styles that require the least effort are often reserved for the biggest creatures for a reason. Anyway, back to our A-team. Another worm heard the scientific explanation had been given by Rhonda and follows its cue to attack. They rush to the nearby rocks, hoping to get some cover from the worms. By some miracle, it works, and they keep this thing at bay, for now. Now comes the next major issue. They need to get to the truck, and it's way out there across a lot of open ground. Like I said before, these are but minor hindrances to those blessed with the Lord's plot armor. Now, for a normal viewer, aka someone who doesn't have a writing team keeping them alive because they're a main character in a blockbuster film, I would suggest using a sound-based diversion to cover your movements. Grab a ton of rocks, have 2 people bound across the plane towards the next set of rocks, while the one who stayed behind throws items in an alternate direction and makes noises to keep the worm fixated on them instead. Once 2 out of the 3 make it across, the original rear guard moves to a different set of rocks in the same direction as the first 2, to avoid having to cross paths with the worm. Rinse and repeat until the first 2 can safely make it to the truck and pick up the third, hauling at it the entire time. Even then, it's not certain you'd outrun these things though. You've been warned. Not that it matters for these chads and their lady chadette. Instead of anything remotely sensible, after a cozy night's sleep in each other's arms of course, they flex on all of us peasants with this.
You guys know how to pole vault!
No Rhonda, I don't. Most dudes I know also wouldn't know how to pole vault, much less when their life depends on it. Seriously, what is it with these scientists Jason Bourning all over the place? How are all these geologists suddenly turning into 80s action heroes? It's like all the Beckys grew up and dedicated their lives to science after a long, hard career of being Becky, with the world requiring them to still use their Becky skills later on. Wait, that is kind of the plot of Jason Bourne, isn't it? I digress. Our team pole vaulted happily ever after to the truck, but unfortunately for them, even the scientist who just gave the explanation didn't listen to her own explanation. These things can sense vibrations and have a pretty decent sense of object permanence. That means unless you come up with some kind of distraction to cover your weird move across the rocks, these things will just follow along underground. Not to mention, they could have just as easily knocked you off your pole by shaking the ground just a little bit, screwing you over even more. You could have made it to the truck with just one sound trap, you guys. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. You may be wondering, what does our dream team receive from the desert gods as a reward for what presumably must have been well over an hour of pole vaulting? Well, their reward is not being dead from these terrible, terrible decisions. They just discussed how these things can remember where you are and follow along through the vibrations within the rock formations. It would therefore stand to reason that if you don't somehow distract the worm, it'll just follow you along. What, you guys thought pole vaulting was stealthy? Even against a blind adversary,
Yeah,
one
man.
would still hear that. Along with their schoolgirlish giggling, of course. Incidentally, it's also likely for and giggles that the worm didn't actually brutally murder them here. We saw one of these things bury an entire truck earlier in the movie, not to mention drag a full-grown human over a mountain like he was a kite. It could have just as easily hindered the truck from moving at all and forced you into a confrontation. And considering going head-to-head with these things is straight-up seppuku, you likely would not fare that well. When they get back to the general store, after some brewskis of course, the town finally realizes their gun nuts have just up and left. How would that happen without anyone noticing? See, this is why you guys should have spent less time making fun of them and more time embracing their love of firearms. Let that be a lesson for all you nerds out there making fun of your local survival nuts. One day the zombies may force you to take shelter, and a survivalist may remember you fondly enough to protect your incapable ass. The residents debate important topics once again, like what they should name the worms, since they made the discovery, and whether the one wannabe in their crew would rather use a pickaxe or a chainsaw against them if they tried to come at him. Yeah, sure bro, this thing can pretty much lift cars like it's nothing, but you and your pickaxe are gonna stop it all alone. Please, by all means, try. And that's not counting the two other siblings it still has left out there also looking to chomp down on you like a tasty afternoon snack. Meanwhile, Val keeps talking about leaving town, which is honestly just as infuriating. Why would you not just set up with the gummers and kill these things using sound traps, like I suggested? Trying to leave town is just gonna get you killed, since these things can literally hear it happening as you make your escape attempt. If you're now relatively confident it's only 3 more of these things, set up proper defenses and arm up. Even with what's left of your pathetic small-town population, you would still outnumber these things at least 3 to 1. I'm not saying you can overpower them because of that, but you could definitely be sophisticated in your approach and put your numbers to work. While we're at it, why does it feel like nobody's taking this situation seriously anymore? They all saw the worm's tongue hanging off the truck's rear. They all knew about their murdered neighbors left, right, and center. They all know that their one escape route was cut off, and that the worms are on a direct path towards them. I was wholeheartedly hoping that little Melvin would just get swallowed up whole by a graboid for bouncing that ball off the ground, let alone for his dumb pranks on the adults that are trying to prepare for a life or death situation. Instead, the graboid just takes his ball away. The adults rush outside when Melvin screams and get caught off guard because of this insufferable little crying wolf BS. I say we should have promoted Melvin to live sound trap right here and now, and used him to put another worm down for good. 7% of the town's population for 25% of theirs seems like a great trade. Besides, we don't really need more Melvins in the world, so sending one off together with a prehistoric monster worm that we also didn't want in our town seems like a win-win. Most of the town's residents run back inside the store for cover, leaving Melvin exposed in some random shed and Nestor atop his trailer's roof. Who cares? There are bigger problems at hand. I'd say one person needs to be on that radio to the gummers non-stop until they can raise them, since they're our best chance for survival at the moment with their hopefully impressive weapons collection. Meanwhile, the others can put the sound trap idea to work. Hell, Melvin and Nestor could unironically be the ones to create the distraction, seeing as they're already outside and their movement would likely attract the worm. That way, the residents can cover them as they get back to the rest of the group, while also hopefully downing one more graboid in the process.
Get off the phone!
That is, provided the kids in this town had at least all of one functioning brain cell between them. Unfortunately, they don't, as evidenced by Mindy outside. I don't want to rip on this girl too much, but I just want to call out that she was outside while the last worm attacked. Not only could she have seen it, was she not super distracted, but she could have also felt it. Sure, if her headphones are on max volume, she wouldn't hear screams or anything, but she would feel the goddamn ground shaking, wouldn't she? I guess not. But because of the fact that she's completely oblivious, she's now in danger herself too.
Bro.
You nerds already know what I'm gonna say here. Why waste another perfectly good sound trap? Sure, she's one of 2 children in this entire town, but for the same reason, it's not like she has many friends to miss her when she's gone. Except maybe Melvin, but hopefully he's gone too. Besides, if Mindy gets gobbled up here, they'd be able to take a worm out with her too. Enormous graboid in exchange for a child that didn't even bother to look up once to see that she was in enormous danger. Better yet, one oblivious kid and one kid who's just a douchebag, in exchange for 2 enormous graboids. That leaves us with just 1 to kill afterwards. I would take that deal.
Good deal.
Nancy finally
That
lays
is a
eyes on her
damn
daughter,
good
just in time to
deal, you
notice
know?
she's about to become worm chow. Funny how the residents all located your daughter the instant they stepped outside, but Nancy somehow went looking for her a while back and never found her. That is especially funny considering there's like, what, 10 buildings tops in this immediate area? I think Nancy just caught up in the fantasy of her life wherein she doesn't hear a pogo stick bouncing around 24/7 and let it get the better of her. Fortunately, she snaps out of it and takes Nancy to their home. After Val forced her hand in terms of accountability, that is. I don't get why she retreats into her own home instead of the general store though, where they're all together and actually have weapons at their disposal. It does work though, since the rest of the residents attract the graboids instead. Val takes shelter atop a pickup, while Earl runs back into the store. Rhonda, for some reason, starts bolting towards Melvin. I'm not sure if she was planning to just yeet him at the graboid for her own survival or what this was supposed to be. Not that it matters, since her foot gets caught on random barbed wire which was conveniently placed here for no reason. Melvin, wholeheartedly deserving to live the rest of his days as excreted worm doesn't even help her. To make matters worse, the barbed wire tightens around her feet, effectively trapping her while the worm slowly reels in his fishing line with a juicy scientist hanging off of it. This is indeed a desperate situation, but fortunately, Val is more than willing to risk his life to literally get into Rhonda's pants, and brings us all some much welcomed bacon-wrapped plot along with it. After this whole ordeal, the crew sits atop the general store and again debates the same dumb decisions over and over. They are still talking about going for one of the trucks. Dude, it was nothing short of luck that you guys ever made it out with any motorized vehicle. Not to mention, you do not know the exact locations of all 3 worms, meaning you would have no idea whether or not you're about to bump into one or not. The only way in which this can work is if you take your off-road vehicles off-road, like I suggested, while the others keep the worms distracted as long as possible to buy the driver some time. However, given that it's 3 worms and they've already killed one with relative ease, just kill them. Making it to another nearby town, signaling rescue, it's cool and all that, but by the time rescue actually makes it back there with you, your whole town could easily have died several times over. And that's if any professional emergency service actually believes you to begin with, which is highly unlikely, even with that tongue on your person as proof. You may as well take care of these things yourself, and since you've now gotten a pretty good understanding of how the graboids operate, it should be more than doable. From the earlier scenes, it seems as though they've already got the firepower to deal with the task at hand. If for some reason they don't, they could always have someone distract the worms while a brave volunteer attempts to reach the gummers for assistance. The long back and forth gets interrupted by a loud cooler. They manage to unplug it, but alas, trigger the impatient hungry worm, awaiting its dinner. Apparently, Mr. Graboid was feeling a number 9 from his favorite Chinese restaurant today, which makes for 42% of the population of Perfection dead. They're forced onto higher ground, since their constant screams of anger and drama keep attracting the Graboids towards them. By climbing on top of shelves, most of the crew makes it through a rooftop hatch in the ceiling, all except Rhonda, who gets yeeted out of the window and winds up climbing atop the water tower instead. Oh, and Melvin climbs on top of the shed he was hiding out in, unfortunately not becoming worm food just yet. Val finally receives a radio transmission from the Gummers, who seem to be but a few miles down the road from them. Strange how they also didn't notice anything happening nearby. Then again, they're also part of the blissfully unaware club, and will likely remain so since again, people weren't told to stay put as a group, and nobody told their fellow man what's going on. I also partially blame how this message is sent across. Val just tells them to get on the roof, rather than any details about the threat at hand or why they should get to higher ground. Heather saw the entire town up on the roofs through her binoculars, and yet waited until Val warned them to do anything with that information, like even just mentioning it. And she still turned on a device that makes a ton of noise with this information in her head, instead of wondering why the entire town is up on the roof, or whether or not this warrants caution from them too. I can't fully blame Heather though, since Val could have taken all of 2 seconds to inform them that the worms hunt using vibrations. It doesn't take long for things to escalate with the worms picking up on their scent. Once the worm shows its ugly face, Bert quickly realizes he's gonna need a bigger gun. With their hunting rifles having little to no effect on target, they try to retreat to their arsenal, but one of the worm's tongues wraps around Bert's foot. Heather makes short work of it using a shotgun, which actually brings up another valid point here. Couldn't we just chop off or destroy all of the worm's tongues and starve it out, since that's the only way that it can eat? They have to use their tentacles to pull in and strangle their prey. That is provided we can't kill it otherwise, but still, might be a way to put the lower caliber weapons to use. Well, that's how I felt anyway, until I saw these guys' arsenal firsthand. Okay, the Gummers are just assholes. I mean, look at this place. Completely reinforced concrete everywhere that the worm could barely get through, loaded to the teats with weapons and survival supplies. I know they were making fun of them and all, but why would they not at least try to convince the population of the town to follow them to what is effectively a bunker? In this case as well, Bert and Heather already have the perfect setup too, with this beautiful murder hole the one Graboid created for them just now. With the weapons they have, they could take care of them all in just a few hours tops. Just have one of the two make a ton of noise, lure worms into the concrete murder hole, and there you go. Considering radio communications were finally fixed as well, Val could easily provide them with all the info they need to do this successfully. When the small arms fire doesn't put down the worm, Bert finally pulls out the big guns, an elephant rifle. Yup, that ought to do it. I do feel like the smaller caliber bullets do hurt the worm, and can even kill it if hit in a critical area. But if you've got one of these, yeah, use it. And just like that, that's another worm down with only 2 more to go. You may be wondering what their next play will be. Will they bring down a load of weapons for their fellow residents? Advise them to haul back to the bunker? You'd be sort of thinking in the right direction. But their actual plan is nowhere near that simple or smart. Basically, they're still gonna try to get out of town. I'm not sure what for, since they just put down half the worms without really even trying yet. The last 2 worms, because they lost half their family, decide to start expediting their timeline by rocking the general store, the house Nancy and Mindy are holed up in, and the trailer Nestor was hiding atop of. Smart from our dream team letting all these people run off to different, less secure locations. Maybe if they satisfy the worm's hunger for the night, they can make it out of town and find rescue. So why not sacrifice a bunch of supporting characters with room temperature IQs? Seriously though, when the worm drags Nestor off, they just sort of sit there, watching. Why didn't they try distracting the worm? You can definitely grab its attention by screaming at the top of your lungs or wailing on the ground with any object. That would have made any escape attempt more than plausible, rather than just having him absorbed into the dirt. Still entertaining this moronic, let's try and leave town plan eventually pissed off the worms so much that they decide to add the Gummers SUV to the collection of no longer roadworthy vehicles in this town. So what does our dream team ultimately decide to do now? They try again with another, even crappier vehicle. Their genius master plan is to use a bulldozer with a trailer attached to it. Once again, enough weapons to go around. Fortifiable survival nut hideout. Only 2 out of the 4 worms remaining, which are very easy to bait using sound traps. How exactly is removing your elements of cover out of that equation and setting yourself up incredibly vulnerably on open terrain any better? The threat will be identical, but your ability to handle it on the go would be severely hindered. The time to leave town is long gone, guys. Now's when the killing begins.
Got a plan.
These guys' credit, though, at least they finally think to start using distractions against the attracted by sound worms. If only they hadn't come to that conclusion 1 hour into the movie. Maybe historians in the distant future wouldn't have to wonder why half the population of Nowhere, Nevada evaporated overnight. They plan to use the tractor sitting next to the store to create a diversion and hoof it for the cat. They hypothesized that because it weighs 30 tons, the graboid wouldn't be able to manhandle it. Right. Yet no. You see how this thing nearly lifted an entire store, followed by a house? Well, the average residential small house weighs about 10 tons.
hilarious.
I can guarantee a well-stocked general store would weigh way more. In addition to being firmly planted on the ground underneath it, a bulldozer would not be, and typically weighs only about 20 tons, not 30. Meaning a graboid would likely just consider this a Meals on Wheels type situation. It's purely the sound traps that's going to either make or horrifically break this already incredibly dumb situation they're about to launch themselves into. And that's without anything going wrong. Which it almost immediately does, of course. And just as Val is out there exposed in the open, it's at this moment that his plot armor has officially run out, with the worm quickly trying to sniff out where its afternoon snack is, as Val is standing still to avoid detection. Fortunately for Val, that's also when the other characters finally decide to actually carry some of the weight of this emergency situation, and finally put some actual effort into attracting the worms towards themselves instead. It works once they start using objects and water, rather than their own vocal cords, and finally gives Val the ability to complete the maneuver to the cat. That bulldozer looks flimsy as hell, and in no way any more stable than any of the buildings in this town, especially not the Gummers residence. The only reason the plan appears to work at all is purely because the worms just don't actually try. They're only nibbling at the thing with its tiny tongues, but never tries just lifting the thing in the air, as we've seen it do with other vehicles. Whatever. In any case, it gets the rest of the town over to the Gummers, and while Val is on top of his vehicle screaming his lungs out, talking about how smart the creatures that let them go all the way to the other side of town are, they're still riding on the get out of town plan. Dude, Bird is literally making IEDs on his rooftop and has an actual elephant rifle, which he has successfully killed a worm with already, even from right there on the rooftop. Baiting these things to attack you before you clown on them with some high caliber rifle rounds or explosive justice is still the play.
Watch these ammo boxes!
This just lost all common sense to me right about here. Dude's loading up enough firepower to not only kill all the remaining worms, but all life in that town, multiple times over, easily. He's got proof that his residence is significantly more effective at providing cover from the worms, and yet he still chooses to join whatever the hell this extraction plan is. Isn't the whole point of being a survival nut that stocks up weapons and canned goods in your homemade bunker that you stay in said bunker when it's the fan? As they leave and we get the perfect shot of this guy's insanely fortified house, he even complains about leaving a top-notch water and air filtration system plus 5 years of food behind in his bomb shelter, along with the rest of his guns. Yeah, this is too stupid for words. It's designed to withstand bombs, perfectly held up against the worms, and yet you're leaving it behind to go shooting giant Jurassic worms atop of a bulldozer in the middle of the desert. You and your wife are right to be crying. except you should be crying over how profoundly dumb you both are. They inevitably, very slowly of course, make it over to the rock formation nearby that was supposed to be their sanctuary. And surprise, surprise, the worms are right there too. Turns out they even laid a trap to render their bulldozer useless, forcing them to fight in the open no matter what.
Eat this!
But because Bert's got a Bert, this still turns into a massive
Bert's
W
doing
for
Bert
Team
stuff.
Worm Food, with him nearly capping one of the worms insurgent style. Unfortunately, it didn't kill the beast, so there's still 2 of them out there. Not that this should concern them, they've got plenty of bombs and ammo to go around. Their new plan is to use the bombs as sound-based deterrents. So instead of throwing the bombs into another direction than the one they're running towards, they plan to throw it right at the rock formation, because they won't be able to stand the sound. Right. Or, just have one guy spill some water like Rhonda did earlier, away from the rest of the group, giving the team a chance to run. Why overcomplicate this situation with constant new plans? As they run, the worms come straight back towards them, further proving that a sound trap could have easily de-risked this situation altogether. I mean, they make it, but with like a millisecond to spare. I know it's movie plot BS, but we even see Mindy tripping at one point during this run. Any tiny thing could have gone wrong and you'd all have been toast without a proper distraction. Not to mention dispersion between yourselves, so the worm can't just nom all of you in one bite. Once atop the rock with the worms making circles around them like sharks in the water, they again start talking about how to leave the rock before the gummers finally come to their senses and realize this plan sucked from the get-go. Of course, your fortified bunker was a better option than whatever the hell this was meant to be. You had already beaten one of these things. You had the perfect setup, but you blew it. So now you have to listen to angry Kevin Bacon tell you why he's right and you're wrong. Again, coming to the same conclusions as before, they try to use bait to their advantage to make the worms surface before feeding them a bomb. Essentially, the concept is an IED fishing line with an active bomb on it that they want to get the worm to gobble up. And it works like a charm. Since this plan isn't completely flawed in every imaginable way possible, now all that's left to do is bait the last remaining worm out of hiding, before elephant rifling or bombing it to death. It's nowhere near that bad of a threat now with just one lone worm left. You could try rocks one more time or just yeet Melvin at the last worm and bomb them both, since it'd be cruel to have him experience being eaten alive and all. Unfortunately, the rocks don't work quite as well the second time around.